First contact and subjugation. The skies above every major city on Earth darkened simultaneously on what would later be called Arrival Day. It was June 17, 2047, when humanity finally got its answer to the age-old question, are we alone in the universe? The answer came in the form of massive ships that blotted out the sun, sleek, obsidian vessels that hovered in silence, their hulls reflecting distorted images of the cities below. For 3 days they waited. No communication, no movement, just silent observation as governments scrambled, militaries mobilized, and civilians either fled or flocked to witness history. Social media exploded with theories, religions claimed vindication or heresy, and scientists worked frantically to establish contact. On the 4th day, they spoke. People of Earth, the message came simultaneously through every electronic device on the planet, translated perfectly into each local language. We are the Galactic Hegemony, a coalition of 17 advanced civilizations governing this sector of the galaxy. Your technological advancements have brought you to our attention. You are hereby annexed as a protectorate species under Hegemony Directive 379. Resistance is inadvisable. Compliance will be rewarded with technological, medical, and societal advancement. You have 24 hours to prepare your leadership for integration discussions. Admiral Sophia Chen, head of the newly formed United Earth Defense Council, stared at the holographic projection of the alien representative in the emergency United Nations session. The being called itself Ambassador Krell, a Zithran from the founding species of the hegemony. Its translucent blue skin revealed pulsing organs beneath, and 6 eyes arranged in a circle around what appeared to be a sensory cluster observed them with clinical detachment. So this isn't a negotiation, Chen stated flatly. It's a surrender demand. That characterization is imprecise. Krell's voice was melodic, almost pleasant. The hegemony brings order and advancement to primitive worlds. Your species shows promise but lacks the maturity for independent galactic citizenship. Your world wars, environmental degradation, and resource depletion indicate a species in need of guidance. The UN Secretary-General leaned forward. And if we refuse this guidance? Krell's skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Refusal is not recommended. Species that resist integration are typically relocated to resource extraction colonies. The hegemony prefers willing participation, but maintains security through any means necessary. Within a week, Earth's governments unanimously accepted the hegemony's terms, not out of agreement but necessity. The demonstration of power had been brief but decisive. The complete neutralization of every military defense system worldwide in less than 6 minutes, without a single human casualty. The integration began immediately. Hegemony representatives established outposts in major cities. Earth was classified as a Category 4 developing world, permitted limited access to interstellar travel and basic hegemony technology. Humans were allowed to maintain their governments under hegemony supervision and could apply for off-world work permits. The educational system was enhanced with hegemony-approved materials. For most people, daily life continued with surprising normality, albeit under the watchful eyes of their new galactic overlords. The promised benefits materialized: cures for cancer and most genetic diseases, clean energy technology, and advanced food production methods that ended global hunger within months. But there was a cost. Earth's resources now served hegemony needs first. Strategic minerals, rare metals, and even water were designated for galactic use, with strict quotas for human consumption. Cultural expressions deemed destabilizing were subtly suppressed, and human innovation was channeled into hegemony-approved directions. Dr. Marcus Singh, formerly a quantum physicist at CERN, now found himself working as a maintenance technician at the hegemony's North American processing facility. Like many of Earth's brightest minds, he had been evaluated, categorized, and assigned a position deemed appropriate for human capabilities. The hegemony's assessment of human potential was dismissive at best. They considered humans physically frail, intellectually limited, and psychologically unstable. System check complete. Sub-supervisor. Marcus reported to his lethery manager, a reptilian being with metallic scales and unblinking vertical pupils. The work was far beneath his abilities, but the position gave him access to hegemony systems and technology that would otherwise be restricted. Acceptable. Human sing. The lethery responded without looking up from its data terminal. Proceed to Section 7 for atmospheric regulation maintenance. As Marcus made his way through the facility, he passed other humans performing similarly menial tasks under alien supervision. The hegemony's underestimation of humans had become their standard operating procedure. Humans were considered suitable only for simple labor, data processing, and basic maintenance, tasks requiring minimal training and intelligence. This systematic underestimation became the hegemony's first critical mistake. 6 months after arrival day, the resistance movement known as Terra Nova had established cells in every hegemony facility on Earth. Their membership included scientists, military personnel, hackers, engineers, and ordinary citizens united by a common purpose: reclaiming humanity's independence. Marcus was one of their most valuable operatives. His maintenance work gave him unquestioned access to critical systems, and the hegemony's dismissal of human cognitive abilities meant they rarely monitored humans closely. Why bother surveilling creatures you consider barely more intelligent than service animals? They don't understand us at all, Colonel Elara Washington remarked during a secret Terra Nova meeting held in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath London. The former Special Forces commander now led the Resistance's strategic operations. They see our shorter lifespans and think we lack perspective. They see our physical limitations and think we lack capability. They've studied our history but missed the most important lesson. Which is? Asked a young programmer from Mumbai. Ilara's eyes hardened. Humans thrive under pressure. We've survived ice ages with stone tools, crossed oceans on wooden boats, and walked on our moon using technology that would make the hegemony laugh. We adapt, we improvise, and we never, ever give up. The resistance didn't engage in direct confrontation. That would be suicide against the hegemony's technological superiority. Instead, they collected information, studied alien technology, and planted the seeds for a longer game. They discovered that while hegemony technology was incredibly advanced, it was also standardized across their territory, designed for efficiency rather than security. Their systems expected compliance, not subversion. When unexpected problems arose, the hegemony applied predetermined solutions from their vast experience governing other species. But they had never encountered humans before. The breakthrough came 9 months after the occupation began. Dr. Eiko Nakamura, a neurologist working at a hegemony medical facility in Osaka, discovered something extraordinary about the alien communication networks. They use a form of quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication across vast distances, she explained to the Terra Nova Leadership Council, displaying diagrams smuggled out on hegemony data crystals. But there's a vulnerability in how they encode the information. It's based on perfectly logical algorithms that follow predictable patterns. Marcus leaned forward, excitement building. And human brains don't work that way. We make intuitive leaps, we recognize patterns, but can also think outside them. Exactly, Eiko nodded. Their systems can't detect what they can't comprehend. We can slip between the logic gates of their security protocols because we think differently. This fundamental difference became the foundation of humanity's resistance strategy. Terra Nova operatives began inserting subtle anomalies into hegemony data streams, not enough to trigger alarms, but sufficient to create compounding errors in their logistical systems. Resource shipments were misdirected, personnel assignments scrambled, and communication delays introduced. The hegemony's response was telling. They diagnosed these issues as system degradation rather than deliberate sabotage. The concept that humans could understand their technology well enough to manipulate it simply didn't occur to them. 18 months into the occupation, Marcus made another critical discovery while maintaining cooling systems at the European Command Center. The hegemony ships, for all their advanced technology, relied on a specific rare element for their propulsion systems, an element they had been steadily extracting from Earth's crust. They call it xanthium. Marcus reported to Ilara during their secure meeting. It's similar to our heavy lanthanides, but with unique quantum properties. Without it, their ships can't generate the energy needed for interstellar travel or their weapon systems. So they're not just taking our resources for general use, Ilara realized. Earth has something they specifically need. And they're running low, Marcus added. I've seen the extraction reports. Earth's xanthium deposits are more concentrated than they've found elsewhere, but they're still finite. At current extraction rates, they'll have stripped our planet bare within 5 years. The implications were clear. The hegemony's benevolent occupation was ultimately a resource grab that would leave Earth depleted and possibly uninhabitable. The timeline for resistance suddenly became much shorter. As Terra Nova accelerated their plans, they encountered an unexpected ally. Not all species within the hegemony approved of their leadership's methods. A Verine scientist named Felix, whose species had been one of the first to be integrated centuries ago, made contact with the human resistance. The hegemony fears what they do not understand, Felix told Ilara during their clandestine meeting aboard a maintenance shuttle in Earth orbit. The Verine's crystalline body structure refracted light as they spoke, creating dancing patterns on the shuttle walls. And they do not understand humans. Your adaptability, your creativity, your willingness to sacrifice for abstract concepts like freedom. These traits are considered primitive by hegemony standards, but I recognize them as strengths. Why help us? Ilara asked, suspicious of this unexpected alliance. Because in 10,000 cycles of expansion, the hegemony has stagnated, Felix replied. They replicate rather than innovate. They control rather than collaborate. My people remember what it was to be free, and we see in humans the spark that the galaxy has been missing. With Felix's assistance, Terra Nova gained access to classified hegemony protocols and technological schematics that accelerated their understanding exponentially. The pieces were falling into place for humanity's counterattack, but they needed one final element: an opportunity. It came in the form of the hegemony's annual assessment conference, when high-ranking officials from across the galaxy would gather at the orbital administrative station above Earth to evaluate their newest protectorate's progress. As the conference approached, strange malfunctions began plaguing hegemony operations worldwide. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to create confusion and divert attention from Terra Nova's true objective. The Resistance had spent months infiltrating the station's construction and maintenance crews, positioning operatives throughout its systems. 2 years after arrival day, as the hegemony's leadership convened to discuss Earth's future, humanity prepared to reclaim its own destiny. The first phase of their liberation was about to begin, and the galactic hegemony was about to learn why underestimating humans was the worst mistake they could have made. The rising storm. Ambassador Krell stared at the holographic displays aboard the orbital administrative station, his 6 eyes blinking in asynchronous patterns that betrayed his growing anxiety. Data streams from across Earth showed cascading system irregularities, minor individually, but collectively forming a pattern he couldn't quite identify. Increase monitoring on all human population centers. He ordered the Zithran analysts, and double the security protocols on essential facilities. Is that necessary, Ambassador? Asked High Administrator Vex, the conference's ranking hegemony official. The Dracorian's spiked exoskeleton clicked lightly as he moved. The human integration has proceeded exceptionally well by all metrics. Their productivity exceeds projections, and resistance has been minimal. Too minimal, Krell replied, his translucent skin darkening with concern. I've governed 12 species integrations, Administrator. There's always resistance. It's expected, planned for. But with humans, it's been subtle. They comply too easily while watching us too carefully. Vex dismissed these concerns with a gesture of his upper limbs. You attribute too much capability to a species barely 2 centuries into their electronic age. Their assessment clearly categorized them as a standard Class 4 developing species, adaptable but primitive. On Earth, Ilara Washington received confirmation that the final preparations were complete. Terra Nova operatives had positioned themselves throughout every major hegemony installation worldwide. The neural interface implants provided by Thelix allowed resistance members to communicate instantaneously without detection by hegemony surveillance, a technology the aliens reserved only for their highest-ranking officials. All cells report ready, Marcus confirmed, his voice resonating directly in Ilara's mind through the interface. Waiting for your command. Ilara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility for humanity's future. Remember, minimal casualties if possible. We're fighting for independence, not revenge. Execute Operation Prometheus. Across the planet, at precisely the same moment, Terra Nova cells activated hidden programs within hegemony systems. For months, they had been subtly altering the base code of everything from environmental controls to transportation networks. The changes were imperceptible individually, but designed to activate simultaneously with devastating effect. On the orbital station, alarms suddenly blared as communication with Earth abruptly ceased. Ambassador Krell rushed to the command center, where chaos had erupted among the staff. "What's happening?" he demanded. "System-wide failure," a technician responded, their appendages moving frantically across the control interfaces. "All Earth-based networks have gone offline simultaneously." "Impossible," High Administrator Vex declared. "The redundancies have also failed," interrupted the Chief Security Officer, a Vulture whose metallic scales reflected the emergency lighting. "Ambassador, we're detecting unauthorized access attempts to the station's primary systems." Krell's skin paled to near transparency, a sign of extreme distress in Zithrans. "Lock down all systems. Deploy security teams to critical areas. This is a coordinated attack." On Earth, the first phase of humanity's counterattack unfolded with precision. Hegemony facilities found their environmental systems suddenly recalibrated to atmospheres toxic to their alien occupants, but perfectly breathable for humans. Transportation hubs redirected incoming ships to empty docking bays or sent them confusing navigation data. Communication networks broadcast contradictory emergency orders. No weapons had been fired, no direct assaults launched, yet the hegemony's control infrastructure was collapsing into confusion. In the North American processing facility, Marcus calmly walked through corridors where panicking alien supervisors struggled to breathe the suddenly oxygen-rich atmosphere. Humans equipped with Terra Nova implants ignored the false emergency protocols broadcasting through official channels and instead followed the Resistance's carefully planned instructions. "Atmospheric systems secured," Marcus reported through his neural link. "Proceeding to Phase 2. Similar reports flooded in from around the globe as Terra Nova's coordinated effort unfolded. They had learned from studying the hegemony's history that direct military confrontation would be futile. No occupied world had ever liberated itself through conventional warfare. Instead, humanity would exploit the one advantage the hegemony had never considered important: creative thinking. The hegemony's rigid, logical approach to governance meant their response to the crisis followed predictable protocols. Security forces secured critical infrastructure. Emergency systems activated backup power and communication channels. Distress signals were dispatched to the nearest hegemony fleet. All exactly as Terra Nova had anticipated. "They're following the playbook," Ilara observed from the Resistance's hidden command center beneath the Antarctic Research Station, one of the few locations on Earth the hegemony had deemed too inhospitable for valuable resource extraction. Thelix was right. The Varian scientists' crystalline form shimmered in the low light. The hegemony has conquered so many worlds that they've reduced the process to a science. They expect resistance to follow predictable patterns based on species psychology. But humans, we're annoying that way. Ilara smiled grimly. We never do what we're supposed to. On the orbital station, Dr. Eiko Nakamura moved purposefully through the medical sector, her hegemony credentials granting her access despite the lockdown. As a human specialist in alien neurophysiology, her presence during the conference had been required but unremarkable. Now, it was essential. Medical emergency in Command Sector 7. She reported through the station's communication system, requesting immediate authorization for emergency protocols. The security systems, already struggling with the cascade of failures from Earth, automatically granted access to the medical emergency protocols, exactly as Terra Nova had predicted. This created a backdoor into the station's primary systems, allowing the hidden team of human programmers on Earth to begin the next phase. Ambassador Krell felt the subtle shift in the station's artificial gravity, a barely perceptible fluctuation that most species wouldn't notice, but that triggered immediate concern in his Zithran physiology. The station's orbital stability is compromised, he announced, interrupting the emergency conference. Initiate evacuation protocols for essential personnel. Belay that, ordered High Administrator Vex. This station is equipped with the hegemony's most advanced systems. A complete failure is impossible unless... The Dracorian's compound eyes narrowed as realization dawned. Unless it was designed to fail. In that moment, the lights throughout the station flickered and died, replaced seconds later by the dim glow of emergency lighting. On every display screen, a simple message appeared in the standardized hegemony script. Humanity duiviti hdra dodivis from daki hegemony. On Earth, the second phase began. The Xanthium extraction facilities, the hegemony's primary interest in Earth, were not destroyed. They were seized. Terra Nova operatives who had been working as maintenance staff and low-level technicians revealed themselves as highly trained specialists who had spent months studying the technology. Extraction facility secured, reported Colonel Justina Rossi, former Special Forces operator now leading Terra Nova's African division. All hegemony personnel contained with non-lethal measures. Similar reports flowed in from extraction sites worldwide. The hegemony's dismissal of human capabilities had led them to employ minimal security at these critical facilities. Why waste resources guarding against primitives who couldn't possibly understand the technology? In orbit, the administrative station's systems came back online, but not under hegemony control. The human programmers, guided by Felix's knowledge of hegemony architecture, had rewritten the core operating protocols. Ambassador Krell and the gathered officials found themselves contained in the conference center, locked down by the very security systems designed to protect them. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the room. Ilara Washington, her expression resolute. Representatives of the galactic hegemony, she began. I am Colonel Ilara Washington of Earth. For 2 years, we have observed your operations, studied your technologies, and learned your weaknesses. Today, humanity reclaims its independence. This is absurd, High Administrator Vex sputtered. You cannot possibly maintain control of hegemony systems. The response fleet will arrive within days, and your primitive rebellion will be crushed. About that fleet, Ilara replied with a tight smile. They've received new orders directly from this station, utilizing your authorization codes, to address an urgent situation in the Centauri sector. By the time they realize the deception, this will be over. Krell stepped forward, his scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming his alarm. How? Our systems are designed with multiple security redundancies, specifically to prevent such infiltration. You designed them based on how you think, Marcus Singh replied, appearing alongside Ilara in the hologram. Logical, sequential, efficient. But humans think differently. We see patterns where you see only chaos. We make intuitive leaps where you follow established protocols. Your greatest mistake wasn't underestimating our technology. It was underestimating our humanity. Throughout the station and across Earth, hegemony officials found themselves contained but unharmed. Terra Nova had been explicit in their tactical approach. Demonstrate overwhelming control without unnecessary violence. This wasn't merely moral consideration, it was strategic. Humanity needed to establish itself not as barbarians lashing out, but as a civilization worthy of respect. Here are our terms, Ilara continued. The galactic hegemony will immediately recognize Earth as a sovereign, independent world. All military assets will withdraw from our solar system. In exchange, we will establish fair trade agreements for Cynthium extraction rights. We mine it. We set the price. You buy it if you wish. Impossible, Vex declared. No protectorate species has ever. We are not a protectorate species, Ilara interrupted firmly. Not anymore. And you should consider your position carefully. Right now, we control your administrative systems across 27 sectors. Your ships respond to our commands. Your communication networks carry our messages. We could bring the entire hegemony to a standstill with a single command. It was not an idle threat. Through Felix and other sympathetic aliens who had grown disillusioned with hegemony rule, Terra Nova had gained access to the most closely guarded secret of the galactic government, the Nexus control protocols that synchronized all hegemony technology. The standardization that made their empire so efficient also made it vulnerable to anyone who understood its fundamental architecture. Ambassador Krell, more experienced than Vex in handling unexpected developments, recognized the gravity of the situation. You've made your point impressively, Colonel Washington. But surely you realize that even if we agree to your terms now, the full council may overrule us once we're released. That's why you won't be released until the terms are ratified by the council, Ilara replied. We've already dispatched the agreement using your authenticated channels. Your colleagues are currently receiving evidence of our control over critical hegemony systems, along with our remarkably reasonable terms. On the displays surrounding the conference room, the hegemony officials watched in disbelief as their own security systems, their own ships, and their own communication networks demonstrated allegiance to human commands. The message was unmistakable. Resist, and the carefully constructed order of the hegemony would collapse. 3 days later, the Council's response arrived, faced with the most significant challenge to their authority in millennia, and the remarkable restraint shown by the humans who could have used their advantage far more destructively. They agreed to the terms. Earth would become the first and only world to successfully negotiate its way out of hegemony control. More significantly, it would establish itself not as a primitive planet of savages, but as a civilization to be reckoned with. As the administrative station prepared for the departure of the hegemony officials, Ambassador Krell requested a private meeting with Ilara and Marcus. You realize what you've done extends far beyond Earth, the Zithran said, his skin patterns reflecting a complex mixture of emotions. You've demonstrated a fundamental vulnerability in our entire approach to galactic governance. That was the idea, Marcus replied unapologetically. Other worlds will look to you as an example, Krell continued. Some within the hegemony already question whether our methods of integration have become counterproductive. Ilara studied the ambassador thoughtfully. You don't seem as disturbed by that prospect as your colleague Administrator Vex. I am a scientist by training, Colonel Washington. Krell's skin lightened to a reflective blue, a sign of openness in Zithran communication. The most valuable discoveries often come from failed experiments. Perhaps the hegemony has been conducting the same experiment for too long without questioning its assumptions. As the hegemony ships departed Earth orbit in the following weeks, humanity began adapting the alien technology they had studied to their own purposes. The neural interfaces, initially restricted to Terra Nova operatives, were refined and improved for wider human use. The clean energy systems were expanded and enhanced by human engineers who approached the technology with fresh perspectives. 6 months after the liberation, Earth welcomed representatives from 12 species seeking to establish direct trade and diplomatic relations outside hegemony oversight. Among them were the Vereen, whose senior diplomat was none other than Felix. You have started something remarkable, the crystalline being told Ilara during the welcome ceremony in the newly established Galactic Relations Center in Geneva. For millennia, The hegemony has claimed that harmony requires uniformity, that progress requires control. You have proven otherwise. We just did what humans have always done. Ilara replied, watching representatives of Earth's nations mingling with beings from across the galaxy. Adapt, improvise, and refuse to accept limitations imposed by others. Marcus joined them, now serving as Earth's chief science liaison for interstellar technologies. The hegemony's fundamental mistake was seeing our shorter lifespans, our physical limitations, and our turbulent history as weaknesses, when in fact they are the source of your greatest strengths. Felix finished. You value freedom more because your lives are brief. You innovate because you must overcome your physical limitations. You appreciate peace because you understand conflict. As Earth entered this new era, humanity carried forward the lessons of both their independent struggle and their ongoing integration into the wider galactic community. They would not isolate themselves, nor would they impose their will on others as the hegemony had attempted to do to them. Instead, they would offer the galaxy something it desperately needed after millennia of hegemony standardization: a different way of thinking, a creative spark, and a reminder that true strength comes not from dominance, but from diversity. The stars, once symbols of humanity's limitations, now represented their boundless potential. And across the galaxy, worlds that had resigned themselves to eternal subservience began to whisper a new word of hope. Earth,